Hey, it's Elijah. This is the Stewardship Blueprint, and I'm going to try to teach you guys how to organize your lives and really give them over to God in every area. And today I'm specifically going to be working on my oven, my range that I'm replacing. A couple months back, our range went out. I was studying for a big exam. I was right in the middle of it, and I didn't have time to fix it. God bless my wife. She has cooked with an Instant Pot and a crock pot and a toaster oven for the past 6 months now. And our oven was going out before then. So we've been struggling with this thing for about 5 years total. But yeah, our oven went out and I tried to pay somebody to do it and they didn't want to do it. I tried to pay 3 or 4 different people at least. And nobody wanted to touch it. And so I told her, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to wait until I'm done with this exam. But once I'm done with the exam, I will tackle it. And praise God, I passed that exam. But now that we're on the other side of it, this is where we're at. So we've spent the last 2-3 weeks looking at different options for ranges. We knew we wanted to go induction. We don't have the hookup for gas, and our kids' breathing kind of made that a concern from the air quality standpoint. But what we've got is this old coil type stove, and I'll just go ahead and show you here. It's good old, reliable, for the most part, coil type. But here's the issue that I'm having, or that we've had. See, this is a GE Space Maker. That's important because that model is 27 inches wide and the standard is 30 inches. When it went out and we started looking for new ranges, we were limited in that. And so the only replacement that I could find for a 27 inch range was $1,800, and it was the same technology, that coils. Immediately I started thinking, okay, I'm going to have to modify the countertops, modify the cabinets, and that's when I started wanting to pay somebody. Well, it seems like to them, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. So what we're going to have to do here is modify this cabinet here, because on this side, we've got this corner cabinet, and I really don't want to start messing with that geometry. There's another thing to fix. But this side, we've got more room to play with. And what I'm going to do is walk you guys how I'm thinking through this and what my thought process is. So I'm going to start with, what's the end goal here? Because anytime that you're setting out on a journey, you want to know where you're going, right? And so what we call that is working from the end. So we look at the end state where we want to be, and we're going to figure out, okay, where do I need to be one step before that, one step before that, one step before that, until we get all the way back to where we are right now, the present. So that said, what's our end state that we want? We want to be in a functioning kitchen with an oven and a range that work. So then we're going to break that down into the steps that need to occur before we get there. So, and we're going to start really, really high level and then kind of narrow down into the specific actionable steps. And I'm kind of figuring this out as I go because, like I said, I've been putting this off for a while and I just haven't had the time. So here we go. So we want our range to be working by the end of this. And so what's that going to take? Well, we have to have a new range, right? And we have to have space for the range. And then we also have to have everything that's needed to make the range work. So we need to make sure the electrical is what it needs to be. And luckily, it is already. So we can kind of cross that one off. So really, it's 2 big groups of having the new range and having space for the range. So we'll break this down, having the range, even further. What's it going to take to have a new range? Well, first we're going to have to order the range. And then working backward from that, what do we have to do to order it? Well, we have to select which range we want. And how do we do that? Well, what do we want in a range? What kind of features are we looking for? And how much space can we get? Because right now we don't have enough for a 30-inch. And anything that goes back, we're going to have to modify the cabinet. So that takes us to our next point, is having space for the range. And some of this is going to be a little out of order or jumbled, but stay with me here. So we need to have space for the range. How are we going to accomplish that? Well, we're going to have to modify the cabinets. And notice something about how I'm writing these out. If you notice, every point that I've discussed has an action and an object. So every step of this process, every task is going to have an action and a verb. So that's what it takes to have a good task. A good quality task is something that you can look at and you say, this is what I'm going to do here to this thing or with this thing. And so here I have modify the cabinets. Modify is the verb, cabinets is the object. So how am I going to modify the cabinets? This is the other question you have to ask. Classic who, what, when, where, and why, and how. So how am I going to modify the cabinets? Well, I have to decide how much space I need. So decide space. And notice here the similarity, right? We've got deciding the space and how much space do we need. So right there, we know that that's going to be a critical point for this whole process, is how much space do we actually need. So the only way that we're going to know that is by selecting a replacement range. Which, just remembering, I already wrote down. So you can see that's almost a little circular, which is a little dangerous, and here's where I got trapped a little bit and why it took a while. So there were all these features that we had to decide that, this is what we wanted, because it's not like it might have been a long time ago where you might have 2 or 3 options for an appliance. Nowadays, there's infinite options. And so in order to select a replacement, we had to decide what's important to us, the features, like I said before. So what kind of features did we want? Well, I started thinking through, how is this thing actually going to get used? Well, we're going to cook on it. We cook at home very frequently. A lot of times before everybody else wakes up, I'm cooking myself breakfast. My wife is cooking for the kids breakfast, and for lunch, less so, but then dinner time, we're mainly eating dinner either at the table here or at my parents' house, or eating leftovers that we cooked the night before. So this thing's going to see a lot of use. So we know we need to have features that are not a pain to use. So let's say for our features, we're going to select things that are easy to use. We're going to select things that look nice, because we're going to have to look at it all the time. Might not be our top priority, but we do have to look at it. So I don't want an ugly eyesore like, well, what's there now? But hey, it was functional. So easy to use. We want it to look nice. And this is not really so much a feature, but more of the reputation of it. So how reliable is it? Because here's my thing. I'm the one that's having to do all this. I'd rather not have to do it again. Which, hey, that's a reason why we want to select a standard size, so that, hey, if we had that oven that was 27 inches, the newer one and it goes out, it doesn't last 40 or 50 years like that one has. And most appliances don't seem to last that long anymore. I don't want to have to face that decision 10 years down the road, kick the can down the road, and all that while be dealing with a range that doesn't work the way that we want it to work. So we want it to be reliable. So now we have our list of features that we're going to use to select a replacement. So easy to use. Let's tackle that one. I want something that if my mom comes over to watch the kids or something and we take the kids, or my wife and I go out on a date, my mom comes and watches the kids, that if she had to, she could cook them something on that stove. So I don't want something that's going to be hard to learn. And I don't want it something that's unintuitive, because I also want to teach our kids to cook one day. And so any obstacle that I can remove from that, that's kind of like an artificial difficulty, I want that out of there. So what am I talking about when I say that? I don't want controls where you have to select through multiple different menus, and I just want to be able to turn the stove on, basically. So we don't want complicated controls. We want simplicity. I heard a quote, somebody said that it was Albert Einstein, but I mean, it seems like Einstein basically said everything if you listen to people on the internet. So I don't know who said it, but I love this quote, that perfection is not reached whenever there's nothing left to add, but whenever there's nothing left to take away. And I think a lot of people overshoot that mark, and they end up taking away things that were actually pretty nice to have and functional. But on the other hand, a lot of times you see companies trying to add more features because they can add it for a cheap amount, and then they've realized that the market's willing to pay more for it, so they can jack the price up. So that's another reason why I don't want these complicated features, because I don't want to pay for them. So that led me to, I want this range to have physical knobs that I can control the stovetop with. And I went back and forth on that, but that's where I settled, because I found that a lot of these places in my research, or a lot of these products, when they don't have physical knobs and it's just that touch screen, that the moisture from the steam or something spilling, it acts basically like your finger touching the control, and it changes it. And I'm like, we're going to be cooking all the time. This is going to happen all the time. We're boiling water, we're cooking a big tray of vegetables or something in the oven, and we open it and there's a whole cloud of steam. So as soon as I read that, I knew I was out on the touchscreen controls, at least as the primary control mechanism. If it's got a touchscreen, it's not the end of the world, but I want the knobs to be able to control the range. So we want physical knobs. We want it to be reliable. And that one's kind of tough, because I have only ever used like 5 or 6 stoves in my life, maybe a dozen if you count visiting other places, but I don't have a huge selection. And so this one, you kind of have to trust other people on it, which is difficult for somebody like me that is tempted to try to be in control of a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, what I found was I went on to Yale Appliances. They seem to have a really good reputation. And I went on their website. I looked through their articles of, which models of, in our case, a slide-in range at 30 inches, which models have the lowest repair rate in the first year. Because that's what they keep data on. They service all their own stuff that they sell. And so they keep that data, thousands and thousands of data points. And it actually surprised me which one we ended up going with, because we were looking at the GE Cafe, the Frigidaire Gallery, what else were we looking at? The GE Profile was one. Started looking at the Bosch 800 series. And if all that means nothing to you, then great. I hope you never have to deal with it. But all these things, that these brands that seem like they have a good reputation. I know some of them from other areas. Like I've got a couple Bosch power tools that I really like. But in looking at that Yale appliance list, I found that actually it was LG, a brand that I had basically written off after hearing a bunch of bad stuff about some of their appliances. They had the lowest first year repair rate of any brand, and this specific model that we selected had less than a 5% first year repair rate. And some of the models that we had been looking at had like over 15. So I was like, you're telling me I've got like a 1 in 6 chance of having to have this thing serviced again within a year? I'm out on that, you know? And so that was huge for us, and that ended up being one of the things that decided for us was that reliability. And it looks nice too. It's okay. You know, it's a stainless steel range. It's not going to win any beauty pageants, but it's functional. Maybe not as pretty as the GE Cafe that we have been looking at, but hey, the Cafe had a lower reliability, and thank God I have a wife who thinks kind of like me in this regard, that she just doesn't want to have to deal with the problem of having the range out again for maybe 6 months. So she decided as well that we weren't going to go with that one. And coming back around to easy to use and the physical knobs and stuff, that's what the LG had. And so that's ultimately what we went with. And so that's the range that we selected. I just placed the order last night. It's supposed to get here next Thursday, so 6 days from now. And then in that time, before it gets here, I need to get to work on this cabinet area over here. And so that brings me to that next point of having the space. So I think one of the things that stops people from working on projects like this, or really any other project, I mean, it could be a car, it could be starting a business or something, I don't know. But a lot of times when you don't know much about a subject, it's very intimidating because you see how much there is. And some people are blessed with this ability to just dive in and figure it out along the way. I am not really like that. I've learned I'm tend to be more of the try to figure it out and figure out my next step. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but yeah, I think I'm definitely one of those people that appreciates having sort of a general path, even if I don't know the whole way. At least I have, you know, a skeleton to kind of like bolt everything else onto as I build my understanding about a topic. But even if you understand it, a lot of times, for me at least, I feel like I know enough to be dangerous, you know, and I know that digging into cabinets is not easy. On the outside, they look like they're just boxes, but when you get into the setup required to be precise with your woodworking and all that, it's intimidating because I don't have that practice. I don't have that experience. So what I realized, I was in that state where I just kind of was frozen. That's what it was. I was frozen. I was in that analysis paralysis, and like, I don't know what to do next, and I'm just going to sit down and figure this thing out. So I put my phone in the other room. I turned the chair around at the kitchen table, and I just stared at the cabinets for a minute. And I thought, what am I missing here? What is going to make this flow a little bit smoother in this project? Because right now I've just got this big task in my head. And that's really the key, is you want to take the big task and break it down again. So there's a huge task of, I got to replace the cabinets. And then what happens is you start cascading and you say, okay, I got to fix the cabinets, got to modify them. So I need to take some width off here. And, oh, well, our range is going to be a little taller than this one. So I'm going to have to lift them up. And so, okay, well, I'm going to have to take, in order to move the cabinets, I'm going to have to take the countertops off And so you just start to do all of this where you build this list up in your head, and it starts producing anxiety. So that's why I think it's good to do something like this where you can break it down on paper and start to see that, hey, these are just actions that you can take. And once you have that action, then you know that that is achievable. And if it's not achievable for you, then you break it down until it is. And so that's what I'm doing here. So I got to have the space to do it. And that seems really vague. So, okay, well, what does that mean? At the core, I need the bare minimum amount of width to put it into the cabinet, to put the oven into the cabinet. So I need width and I need height. Now, if it was too low, if our countertops were taller than the range, then that would be a problem because I would need to lower the cabinets, and that would be way worse. But our cabinets are actually going to be a little bit under height, and so we'll have to raise it. That's a challenge, but we're getting there. At the moment, I have enough vertical space, and so I'm in the clear there. I don't have enough horizontal space, and like I showed you, I can't really move it on that left side. I can't shift over that way. I have to go over to the right. So I started thinking, and you know, we've got all this stuff in here, and then I thought, well, that's really not that much stuff. Could we maybe pare that down? And here, these are all our utensils that, you know, we don't really use as much. And so I thought maybe we could get rid of some of those. And then I started thinking, man, how wide is that space? If I bring this, so this is a 27-inch model. If I bring this over 3 inches this way, then how much room? I have this much here. So how much room would I have if I shift this unit over this way? How much room would I be left over with? And so what I found is actually that this trash can would fit underneath there. To click for me. So I started thinking, this might actually work, if I can find it. Because we hate having that trash can there. Because we have to drag it over. Anytime we're prepping food, we drag it over so that we're not dropping stuff. And we have a daughter that's allergic to eggs. So anytime we make eggs, we're always kind of having to watch the trash can to make sure that she's not digging into it, because she's at that age where she's walking around and she's just touching everything, moving everything. And the other day, she opened up she dug into the trash can where the eggs were, or the eggshells from cooking. And so then we snatch her hand up so she doesn't put it in her mouth or anything, and we go to wash her hands, we get her all cleaned up. But what I started thinking was, man, if we just get rid of that cabinet on the side, yeah, we lose a little bit of storage space, but we've got a ton. And what I showed you over there is probably about half of the storage space we've got. So we're blessed with that. But if we narrow that cabinet by a good amount, we can actually fit a trash can. We can fit that trash can right there. And everything started to click into place here. So I started thinking, and I'm like, I've got my vertical height that I need. I've got the vertical space. I need the width. So I need to modify that. Well, then I realized I don't have to have it all at the same time, because what's the minimum thing that I'm trying to achieve here? I want my range to work. Well, in order to do that, all I need is to put it there. And to do that, all I need to do is take those cabinets out. And so I'm starting to break this down step by step. And I realize I can just take the cabinets out on that side, move them over there somewhere else for the time being, until I have time to really fully dig into it, put the range there, hook it up, get to cooking on it, and then I can start working on the cabinets and fine-tuning it. But in the meantime, my wife won't have to be dealing with a range that doesn't work. And so it was that width that was really the key driver there. So how can I have the width to do what I need to do? I can take the old cabinets out, or take the existing cabinets out, and then all of a sudden, I don't just have 30 inches, I've got like 7 feet there to put that range in. Okay, so now the range is, we have the space. Well, we don't just want to have the range there, we want it to be working the way that it's intended to work. And so to do that, we need to be able to cook. And to cook, we need to be able to prep our food. And to prep our food and not have to carry it around the whole kitchen or across the whole kitchen from the kitchen table, we need to have a kitchen counter that we can prep on. So this has kind of been a rambly running around in circles, but we can take the existing counter out. So that's the cabinets and the counter. And then all of a sudden we have that space. And so then we can come back, modify. Now we're totally free at this point, and we can just do it as we have time or make time. We can modify for the trash can, shift over that second unit, that second box there, and then we can replace the countertop. At the correct elevation. Sorry, the correct height for you non-engineers. So that might mean we install a taller kicker. And, that's another thing to do, but at the end of the day, it's not that hard. And then we might raise up our other countertop to match. We're talking about maybe even getting new countertops because they're kind of old and beat up. Functional, but if we're already going to be tearing them off, then hey, we might as well replace them now rather than coming back and doing it later. But if we don't want to do that, then at the very least we have a range that's in, our cabinets are back in, and we can cook and start hosting people again. And we've really been missing that because when we bought this house, we said that a big reason for even buying it was because we knew that we would have all this opportunity to host people and to make that a regular feature of our kids, or regular feature of our lives, and teach our kids how to be hospitable. Not that you can't be hospitable in an apartment or something, but just logistically, I've got a big family, she's got a decent sized family, and when we host big groups from church, it's a little harder to do that in an apartment that's, it was all the way across town. And so when we bought this house, we said we wanted to use it to be hospitable and to return that gift basically to the Lord and really let him be, understand that he's the owner of everything. And so we're just stewards of it. And it's not our house to do whatever we want with. It's our house to do what we want in God's will, aiming for our desires, our wills to line up with his will. So yeah, that said, we're looking forward to it. I've got a week before it gets here. I'm going to be out of town this weekend, and yeah, it's going to be a little pressed for time, but at the very least, I know for a fact I'll be able to get that side cabinet out. So I know I'm going to have room. They're going to haul away the old one. So that's awesome. And I've got a friend that's going to help me hook up the electrical stuff because that is kind of outside my wheelhouse. And we're dealing with some pretty heavy duty electronic stuff here with induction. And it's like a 50 amp circuit. So luckily the circuit's already good, but it's a whole nother conversation. Before I go, I just wanted to say thanks for bearing with me this long, and hopefully I can be a little bit more concise in the future, but hey, I'm trying it out. And if you found this helpful, make sure that you share it with your friends, even if you don't share it on YouTube or something, or like it or save it, all that stuff. Share it with your friends. And if there's something that you found valuable about how I broke that down step by step and kind of worked through that breakdown, let me know in the comments. Send me a message or something. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to see what you're working on and try to help you with that if I can. And I'm hoping in the future I can get into some interacting with everybody and seeing can we solve your problems in real time, kind of something like this. So I'm, like I said, I might try that out in the future, but for now I'm going to just keep doing this stuff. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks.